There are 3 UFC fighters that have to be cut ASAP. There are a couple fighters on the UFC roster that have definitely overstayed their welcome. Maybe at one point they were fan favorites, but now, be it inactivity, a horrible losing streak, or age catching up to them, these fighters now need to call it quits or get cut. Numero uno, Yair Rodriguez, the guy that inspired me to make this video, clearly needs to be cut from the UFC after what he just did. Unless you've been living under a rock, Yair did his classic move by pulling out of UFC Noche just a month before it was going to happen in September, forcing Jose Delgado to face John Silva, which is literally sending a coughing baby to a hydrogen bomb. Injuries and pullouts happen, sure, but this does not look good on top of what Yair has been doing, or I guess not doing, the last year and a half. The last time Yair fought was back in April of 2025 when he fought Patricio Pitbull, and granted, a pretty good fight, but since then, he hasn't even come close to fighting anyone else. He talked all that shit to Diego Lopez in their press conference, and after Yair won and Diego lost on the card, it looked like that fight was inevitable. It made way too much sense for both guys to fight for a top contender spot, especially with their beef, but this would never happen. Apparently, this fight was offered to Yair Rodriguez for UFC Noche last year, but he turned it down for whatever reason, which is insane to me. Insane because Diego Lopez, from that point, has gone on to fight 3 more times. At last year's UFC Noche, of course, against John Silva, where he put on a 2-round show, which was insane, complete fireworks, which ended in a crazy spinning elbow finish. And then after that, this would somehow set him up for another title shot against Volkanovski, which pretty much ended the same way, but then Diego Lopez would cap this off with another big opportunity as he would open up the biggest card of the year at UFC White House and deliver a nasty knockout of Steve Garcia. In the last 3 fights, Diego Lopez has fought at UFC Noche, got another title shot, and then fought on the biggest card in the UFC, while Yair, seemingly recovering from an injury from a year and a half ago, has done nothing. Jesus Christ, what are we doing? And then one time Yair could prove to the fans that he was back, he pulls out again. This is legal grounds to cut this man, and this isn't the first time Yair has pulled shit off like this. Do you remember the legend of Zabit Magomedsharipov? A big part of the reason why the legend Zabit retired was because of the constant pullouts and reneging of contracts from Yair. The first time Yair was offered a matchup with Zabit, he turned it down, claiming he didn't want to fight someone below him in the rankings, which actually led to Dana White cutting him briefly in 2018. Granted, this cut was short, as he would reconcile with the UFC and go on to have a fun fight with Korean Zombie in the same year, and a couple fights with Jeremy Stephens. And in 2020, he was finally set to fight Zabit, but can't make this up, he pulls out of the fight again due to injury this time, and the constant rescheduling of the Yair fight was so much for Zabit that he actually left the sport entirely. Imagine, you're so dodgy with fights that you force one of the best UFC potentials to pull out of the sport entirely. That's how unreliable Yair is. Which is crazy that even though he's yet again pulled out of a fight and hasn't fought in over a year and a half, he's still ranked number 5 in the rankings, which is stupid. Because even without the inactivity, look at the guy's resume. It is not good. Patricio Pitbull was a good fight and performance for Yair, but Pitbull was 37 years old coming from Bellator, making his UFC debut. That's not necessarily a win that should keep someone in the top 5. Then, before that, he gets arm triangled from a come-behind win from Brian Ortega. TKO'd by Volk. He did submit Josh Emmett, but mind you, Josh Emmett was 38 years old when they fought. He quote-unquote TKO'd Brian Ortega, but that was due to an injury, so that doesn't really count. And we saw what happened when both guys were healthy, relatively speaking. He did give us a good fight with Max in the Apex in a tough loss, but still, that was a loss. So his last win, real win, was against Jeremy Stephens, which, I mean, I guess he kind of sucks, but whatever the case may be, I don't think the media knows what it's doing. This is not a resume of a top 5 featherweight. And again, you put this all on top of a guy that's just not active, cut this guy immediately. But then we get into a guy that has been active, he's just not been winning. Tai Tuivasa should have been cut from the UFC like 3 fights ago. Dog, this guy is on a 7-fight losing streak. The last time Tai won was back in 2022 when I was still in college, bro. And in this losing streak, he has looked awful in a majority of them. Okay, the first loss wasn't that bad. He got KO'd by Cyril Gane, but that fight was pretty fun considering Tai somehow landed this giant right hand over the top that dropped Cyril. But After that, it was downhill. He got ran over and KO'd bad by Sergey, choked out by Volkov, submitted by Tabora, had a shitty fight against Rosenstrike, an even worse fight with Teixeira, and then capped this off by losing to Louis Sutherland, giving him his first win in the UFC. Tai is nowhere near UFC level, clearly, and it's made even worse that he's fighting Robelis Despain, 6'7", long striking heavyweight. Look, I get Robelis wasn't that good when he was in the UFC his first go-around. He can't wrestle for shit and got out-grappled by Austin Lane, but man, it's not like Tai is going to take down Robelis. He's going to try to find a Hail Mary of a shot, and that's not going to end well. The heavyweight division just doesn't need Tai anymore. He was kept in the division for as long as he has because heavyweight was so desperate for a star for the last couple of years, but there's actually a solid amount of heavyweight names now, at least coming up. Josh Hokett, whether you like him or not, is probably the fastest rising name in the heavyweight division and the UFC in general, and it's like been less than a year, but he's already built a name big enough to be at the UFC White House card and now potentially fight one of the biggest stars in the UFC in Alex Pereira. And speaking of Alex, he's in the division now, which is another name that's going to bring a lot of people to the division. Waldo Cortez Acosta, despite losing his last fight, is a pretty fun addition to this division as well, and Gable Steveson, with the hype surrounding him, is another new name in the division that we'll probably see fight a lot more. Tai used to be one of those small amount of recognizable names in the division, but it's over now. I'm sorry, Tai, we don't need you anymore, especially considering the last fights he's been in. And finally, speaking of a name that used to be really fun but is now on a pretty brutal losing streak, we of course have Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler is just a stepping stone for everyone in lightweight at this point. The Roofy fight was bad. Michael Chandler didn't have a moment in this fight. He just got smashed. He had some moments in the Patty fight. He was able to take him down early, but he got sniped with this knee, got taken down himself, and then finished. And even when he was quote-unquote good, record-wise, he was actually pretty goddamn bad. He fought 8 times in the UFC and only won twice. He's on a pretty bad 4-fight losing streak, with 3 of them coming from brutal finish. And again, these fights are not even fun anymore. Even though he was losing in the UFC, at least we had Michael Chandler versus Charles Oliveira 1, where he had big moments. Chandler versus Justin Gaethje, which is an all-time classic. Chandler versus Dustin Poirier, which was an incredible fight as well. But goddamn, that second fight with Charles was kind of forgettable. He was just trying to find one big shot and kept getting out-wrestled. And again, with the Patty and Roofy fights, those were just bad. This is not funny anymore. It's just sad. And he keeps posting that he will see him at the top and all this motivational stuff, and like he's gonna switch to another gear at 40 and he's training super hard, but he's got to give it up, man. The only reason, maybe not to cut Michael Chandler at this point, is for him to fight an equally washed Conor McGregor, but I don't know. I think that fight is no longer exciting to me, and I think it's going to be really sad. Both their last performances were letdowns and so hard to watch. And sure, the press conference is probably going to be funny, very amazing with a lot of Conor McGregor quotes, but we all know the actual fight is going to be pretty goddamn bad. But anyways, what do you guys think about these 3 fighters? Yair Rodriguez clearly needs to be cut. This dude keeps pulling out and for some reason is still ranked top 5 in the division by the media. And then additionally, Tai Tuivasa and Michael Chandler just have to call it quits or get cut for their own safety. It's pretty bad. I don't think they're going to get wins in the top 10 of their divisions, and they're just punching bags at this point. But again, I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on today's topics. And thank you guys seriously for always supporting, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.